The Cuban government has confirmed that recent diplomatic talks took place in Havana between the Cuban and United States officials, even as tensions remain high over Washington's energy blockade on the island. Speaking on Monday, Alejandro García del Toro, who oversees U.S. affairs at Cuba's foreign ministry, said the meetings involved assistant U.S. secretaries of state and senior Cuban officials at the level of deputy foreign minister. According to Garcia del Toro, the discussions were conducted in a respectful and professional atmosphere and no threats of deadlines were issued by the American side, despite reports circulating in some US media outlets. The talks come at a time when Cuba is facing severe fuel shortages and economic pressure linked to the US oil blockade, which Havana says has worsened its already fragile economy. Cuban officials said that lifting the blockade on fuel supplies was a central issue in the discussions. Garcia del Toro accused Washington of economic coercion, arguing that the policy punishes the Cuban population and pressures other countries not to export oil to the island. Reports from the US outlet Axios said the meetings, which took place earlier this month, marked the first time American diplomats had flown into Cuba since 2016, signaling a new diplomatic push between the two long-time adversaries. According to those reports, US officials laid out several conditions for negotiations to continue. These reportedly include the release of political prisoners, easing political restrictions, and economic reforms aimed at liberalizing Cuba's struggling economy. Washington has also raised concerns about foreign influence on the island and suggested steps such as allowing Starlink internet services in Cuba and resolving compensation claims from Americans whose assets were seized after the 1959 revolution. The diplomatic engagement is unfolding against the backdrop of the increasingly tense rhetoric between the two countries. US President Donald Trump has threatened tariffs on countries supplying oil to Cuba and has hinted at possible military action, moves that Havana says have deepened the crisis. The blockade has contributed to fuel shortages, daily blackouts, and an intensifying economic crisis across the island, with tourism and transportation also hit hard by the lack of fuel supplies. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has said the country is prepared to defend itself if the United States carries through on its threats, while still expressing openness to dialogue. Meanwhile, several international leaders have urged calm. The leaders of Mexico, Spain, and Brazil have called for sincere and respectful dialogue, while Germany's chancellor said there was no justification for military intervention in Cuba. For now, the talks in Havana represent a rare moment of direct engagement between the two countries, even as the broader confrontation over sanctions, energy supplies, and political reforms remains unresolved.